for Monday, June 22nd, 2020. This is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. As always, welcome to the show. And again, as always, trying to encourage people to be better citizens, okay? Which means the most fundamental thing is be willing to listen to our neighbors, our co-workers and stuff, and at least understand where they're coming from. Understand what brought them to the place rather than just jumping to, well, that guy's an idiot, you know. Folks, I guarantee you we are way closer. I don't, Republican versus Democrat, liberal versus conservative, whatever labels that people have used to simplify this and to push the emotional buttons to force you into a tribe, a cult, if you will, on one side or another. If you were to actually spend time listening to your neighbors, your colleagues, your co-workers, your family, listen and just simply tell me how you got where you are, and let me share where, and you know, and what factual information, what did you see? And anyway, you would find out that we're on a much, we would be on the same sheet of music, where we'd be on the same page and stuff like that in a lot more. And because this country, it is, a country of all of us, and I would never even think that it would be in our best interest to kind of divide the country into different areas. We are this nation, this America, this United States. It's a great place, and it can be even greater if we'll work together for a common good. Okay. Today's show is called Consequences. Consequences. So, one of the things that occurs is, people, they'll do things and they won't really consider the consequences. Sometimes this happens when you're youthful. For example, when you're young, you don't have these what are called frontal lobes in your brain. That's the area of the brain that is developed to kind of house this area of thinking of self-preservation and kind of the future. And so, when you're young, you can do things that are not in your best interests, and you don't have the wherewithal to avoid it. It's one of the reasons why parents, that's why when you're a child, the parents make the decisions for the child. And so the parents teach a child, well, you have to have good hygiene, otherwise you're going to have problems. So even though the child might say, well, why should I take a bath, or why should I brush my teeth? Well, the parents know that, if you don't have fairly good hygiene, you're going to have problems. You're not going to have teeth to brush, or you're going to get an infection or something, and maybe even die from getting a cut or something like that, on and on and on. These are all the things that youth, the inexperience and the lack of forward thinking, appreciation of the future can cause. So there's consequences with making decisions, and again, if you're kind of a young person, a youthful person, 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, or whatever, a lot of those consequences just can't be real for you because you don't really look at the future. Then there's a lot of people that also don't try to step into the shoes of someone else. And so they think, well, what's the consequence for me? And they'll say, well, if I shoplift, if I go in and I take a piece of jewelry, or I take, I don't know, whatever, canned goods or whatever, what they will, what they don't appreciate is that there's consequences to that, not just to themselves. Okay, yes, they are risking getting getting arrested and stuff like that. But there's consequences to the store, and there's consequences to the employees in the store, and there's consequences to society, because you're acting in a way that is not appropriate, and that ripple effect goes through society. So the rest of us, there's a certain throughput of shoplifting and stuff like that, stealing that goes on in society, and the rest of us pay for it. We all pay, like for example, on our credit cards, we pay these fees and stuff like that, and a portion of that is to cover fraud and abuse and stealing and that kind of stuff that goes on in the merchant area on a regular basis, and we all pay for that, and it's a lot of money. It's maybe only a percent or two of our purchases, but if you talk about an American economy that has whatever it is, $20 trillion of production, total value of production, a small percentage of that big number is a big number. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars. And then you have consequences like, maybe a store manager is going to hold an employee responsible for the fact that, somebody successfully stole some things under that employee's, watch or oversight. And while you're not being a good enough employee, you're not protecting my interests good enough, and so that employee gets fired, because not really because the employee is doing a bad job, but because unfortunately people are stealing while that employee is in the store, and depending on how good somebody is at shoplifting, it can be pretty darn hard to catch these people in the act of stealing from a store. So the point being that when you do things, there are consequences, and it's not just consequences for yourself, it's consequences for society, the ripple effect. Okay? Now, when Mr. Trump was originally elected, and the run-up to his election, I have to say there weren't many people around me at the time that would talk about how much they liked him. But after he was elected, they talked about, that the fact that they had voted for him, and, they thought he would get stuff done, and there was a fraction of that, and I don't know, I would say maybe a third of the people that told me they were supporters of him because he was going to blow up Washington. They were looking like, okay, he's a hand grenade, and I'm going to throw this hand grenade into Washington because I'm frustrated, I'm angry with the system, all the politics and everything, and so we're going to take Donald Trump and we're going to toss him in there as a hand grenade, and we'll blow up government, and I don't care what happens. I want to just cause hate, discontent, and disruption in government because I'm so mad and frustrated with it. Well, that's well and good for you to do that if the consequences only came down upon you. Okay? And a good analogy is this, let's talk about motorcycle helmets for a moment. Okay, a little tangent here. So if you're riding a motorcycle and you decide not to wear a helmet, and you fall off a motorcycle or get hit or whatever, and you get seriously maimed, or all kinds of bad things can happen to you because you're basically exposed, and a lot of this happens to you because you weren't wearing a helmet. Well, that still has consequences on the rest of it, but at least most of the consequences land on you and your family. At least it's you and local people around you. There are still ripple effects, though, because, emergency rooms and all this other stuff have to care for people with the trauma of not wearing helmets and so on. But okay, at least it's mostly localized, and at least it's, and then I'm free to wear a helmet and protect myself. Okay, but the problem is, when you vote to put Mr. Trump as president, you're effectively voting, if you think about the analogy with the helmets, you're saying, I don't care who you are, you can't wear a motorcycle helmet. If you want to ride a motorcycle, you can't wear a helmet. Sorry. I say I don't want to wear a helmet. That's my prerogative. I'm not going to vote for that. And by the way, by virtue of my vote, I'm saying that you cannot wear a helmet even if you want to. I'm pushing my consequences onto you. And this is exactly what's happened with those of us who, and again, and I remember when people were talking about this, I hadn't really thought it through myself very much. I just like, well, I guess that's your prerogative. We're all free. I guess it comes down to you're free to vote, and you can vote any way you want to. That's America. But the other part of freedom is responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility, and there are consequences to how you vote. There are consequences to how you vote, and they don't just affect you, or they don't just affect your family. They affect all of us. Just like the helmet thing. If you choose, to vote for something and like a helmet law, and you say no one can wear helmets, that affects anybody who wants to ride a motorcycle, not just you. And so if you vote for Mr. Trump right now, and so in 2020, November 3rd, so it's 120 days away or whatever it is. If you vote for him because he is still that hand grenade that you're wanting to throw in the government, understand, yeah, he's different. Yeah, he's blowing up what was there. But what he's blowing up is leaving a catastrophe even bigger than the catastrophe that was there, in the form of, he's really working hard to set up a corrupt organization around him. He's systematically going through and getting rid of people that would check him in what he wants to do. And so you're really enabling this guy who wants to be a dictator. You're enabling him to do that. And especially if you give him 4 more years, because it takes time. It takes time. You've seen that it's taking time to get rid of various inspector generals from various departments, and to, this guy, I was recommended by the Republican Party, so I went ahead and appointed him. But no, he doesn't do exactly what I tell him. I need to get rid of him. I need to put somebody in, one of my lackeys that will do exactly what I tell him to do. And so systematically he's been doing that. And he's done it with the Attorney General, for example. Mr. Barr is basically, he's a Trump's personal attorney. He's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be an independent, representative of the Department of Justice, and doing, overseeing just things, fair, legal, lawful things. And instead he's just pushing whatever agenda, Mr. Trump's personal agenda. He's pushing it. And, Trump looks at it as loyalty. That's great. He does exactly what I tell him to do. But that's not that guy's job. His job isn't to do exactly what the president tells him to do. His job is to do what's right and legal and appropriate and just for all of us, including Mr. Trump. And that means that if Mr. Trump on occasion is saying something that is not right and just and legal, then he should be stopping him and saying, look, sorry, Mr. President, you can't do that because it's not just, it's not fair, it's not right, it's not legal, don't do it. But at the moment, Mr. Barr says, we're in power, and I'm going to do whatever you want, sir. Tell me what to do. Consequences. Your vote has consequences. With freedom comes responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility. Your choices have consequences. You have the responsibility to understand them and to act accordingly. For the Pro and Con Show, I'm Michael James Ott. Once again, thank you for watching the show. Until the next show, bye for now.